Somewhere in America right now, there's a photo album full of wedding pictures that were never a wedding at all, staged, posed, submitted straight to USCIS as proof of a marriage that only existed on paper. And on August 12, 2026, federal prosecutors finally caught up with the people who built an entire criminal business out of exactly that. 11 people. Over a decade. More than 1,000 fake marriages. If you've ever wondered what USCIS is actually looking for when they scrutinize a marriage-based green card case, this is the real answer, and it's bigger than almost anyone expected. Let's start with what actually happened. On Wednesday, the Justice Department unsealed an indictment charging 11 individuals with running what Attorney General Todd Blanche called one of the largest marriage fraud prosecutions in U.S. history. According to the indictment, from at least 2016 through July 2026, this network arranged sham marriages between U.S. citizens and foreign nationals, primarily citizens of China, so those foreign nationals could fraudulently obtain green cards and, eventually, citizenship. Some participants paid up to $100,000 for a single sham marriage. Blanche didn't mince words at the press conference. This scheme was not a quick fly-by-night operation, he said, but rather a years-long, multi-million-dollar cottage industry built specifically to help people who legally could not otherwise become citizens of the United States. Here's the scale of it, because the numbers genuinely stop you. Based principally in New York City, this network operated nationwide, arranging marriages in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, and internationally in China and even Vanuatu, an island nation in the South Pacific. 8 of the 11 defendants are Chinese nationals, many living in Sunset Park, Flushing, and Staten Island. For over a decade, prosecutors say, this operation ran quietly enough and convincingly enough to slip past a system built specifically to catch exactly this kind of fraud. Think about how sophisticated that actually has to be for a second. This wasn't 2 people meeting a broker in a parking lot. According to prosecutors, the network employed attorneys, tax preparers, and marriage officiants, and paid U.S. citizen spouses in structured installments, one payment up front for marrying the foreign national, a second payment once legal status was secured, and a final payment after the couple quietly divorced. To make it look real for USCIS, conspirators staged wedding photos, sometimes literally posing couples for pictures they'd never actually lived, and submitted them as evidence of a genuine, loving relationship. That's the part that should genuinely unsettle you if you've ever filed real evidence for a real relationship. The fake version was built to look identical to yours. Quick pause here, because if you're currently going through a real marriage-based green card case yourself, this is exactly why your process feels more scrutinized than it used to. Go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep tracking how this case unfolds. Now, here's the part that should genuinely concern anyone who benefited from this network, even indirectly. When reporters asked Blanche whether people who received a green card through this scheme would have it revoked or face deportation, he wouldn't give a simple answer. It depends on the circumstances, he said, adding that the Justice Department is actively looking into thousands of marriages tied to this network. Some of those individuals, he confirmed, already have their green cards. Some may already be U.S. citizens. That single sentence is doing an enormous amount of work, because it means this case isn't closed at 1,000 marriages and 11 defendants. It's a starting point, and the government has explicitly said it's still investigating who else was involved on the receiving end. USCIS Director Joseph Edlow put the agency's position bluntly. Anyone willing to lie, cheat, or steal their way to legal immigration status is a direct threat to America's national security. That's not just rhetoric for a press release. It's the exact philosophy driving the kind of intense scrutiny we've been covering on this channel. The discretionary review standards, the cross-referenced records, the expanded interview requirements. Cases like this one are the reason officers now treat every marriage-based application as something to actively investigate, not just process. When a fraud ring this large, running for a decade, right under the system's nose, finally gets uncovered, it doesn't just end with 11 arrests. It reshapes how every single legitimate applicant gets evaluated going forward. Here's a detail worth sitting with for a moment. Some of the couples in this network stayed married for years, filing renewal after renewal, showing up to interviews, answering questions about a life together that never actually happened. That's not a quick scam anyone stumbles into by accident. That's a sustained, disciplined performance, coordinated across multiple states and 2 countries, held together by paid actors playing spouses for a decade. When you understand the level of planning that went into fooling the system, it becomes a lot easier to understand why the system now assumes nothing and asks for proof of everything. So, what does this actually mean if you're in a completely real, legitimate marriage right now, going through this exact process? It means the scrutiny you're facing isn't random, and it isn't personal. It's the direct result of cases exactly like this one, a decade-long, multi-million-dollar industry that officers are now trained to actively hunt for in every single file that crosses their desk. The evidence USCIS wants: joint finances, consistent timelines, real photos with a real history behind them, exists specifically because fraud rings built entire businesses out of faking those exact things convincingly enough to fool the system for years. Understanding that doesn't make the process less frustrating, but it does make it a lot less mysterious, and it might make the next RFE feel less like a personal accusation and more like a system reacting to a threat that was genuinely real. Here's the honest, bigger picture. This case will likely keep expanding. Prosecutors have already said they're looking into thousands of marriages connected to this network, which means more names, more charges, and potentially more green cards under review are almost certainly coming in the months ahead. For genuine couples navigating this system honestly, the lesson isn't fear. It's understanding exactly why the bar keeps rising and making sure your own case can stand up to exactly the kind of scrutiny that cases like this one made necessary. A decade-long fraud network doesn't just get dismantled in a courtroom. It quietly rewrites the rules for everyone who comes after it, whether they had anything to do with it or not. Before you go, make sure you've hit subscribe and turned on notifications, because we're going to keep following this case as it develops, including whether more defendants get named and what happens to the green cards and citizenships tied to this network. If this video helped you understand something happening in the immigration system right now, share it with someone who's currently going through their own marriage-based case, because context like this genuinely helps make sense of a process that can otherwise feel confusing or unfair. Thanks so much for watching. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take care.